A couple days ago, I saw it on sale and decided to purchase the M1 MacBook Air base model, the one with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage to make music with. Considering that I don't really care to make music outside of this room, and 10 feet away from me sits a 2018 iMac Pro that runs literal laps around this thing, I guess the question is, why? Yes, why indeed. Let me explain. I was making music and I was doing it on a cracked version of FL Studio on my mom's computer. So my family decided to get me a Lenovo laptop in 2009. It was $500 and it had 4 gigs of RAM, probably a single core i5 processor. It did the job. I made so much music on that laptop. I used it for 2 or 3 years and I must have pumped out 1,000 tracks on there. Almost every one of those sessions, I was running up against the limitations of the computer, and I somehow made it work. Once I made enough money from the music that I made on that laptop to buy another computer, I did so immediately. And then I did that again a few years after that, and then a few years after that. And now I'm sitting here with the 2018 iMac Pro. And I do a lot of heavy lifting on there, like tracking and mixing and mastering projects that have, 50 to 100 tracks. And it pretty much does anything that I can throw at it. But for some reason, when it comes time for me to write new production on there, I don't feel very inspired. It's very hard for me to get anywhere on it. I didn't really know why, because I love making beats here with my hardware and my equipment. I have no problem doing that, but as soon as I sit down in front of that computer, it's very difficult for me to get work done. And then I started thinking about that Lenovo laptop again, because it was, as much as I was appreciative of, my family getting it for me, it was kind of garbage, Suddenly it hit me. I was trying to find a link between my enjoyment working on that laptop and also my enjoyment with working here with all this equipment. I started to notice similarities in the limitations that both of those scenarios provide. I see both of them as like an efficiency puzzle. A big misconception about having all this gear is that you can do anything you want, and that's not true. Big argument with, computers versus samplers and synthesizers and stuff, like hardware, is that the more money you spend, the more things you should be able to do. I think that's a red herring, honestly, because you're never going to get more capable than a modern day computer. No matter what I purchase or what I acquire in terms of, hardware, I'm never going to match up to the things that you'll be able to do on a laptop or even on an iPad at this point. But what you do get is a conversation. Follow me for a little bit. When you're working with limitations, you have to come up with compromises. And having to make compromises, I think, is a huge part in getting to be creative. Because what ends up happening is when you put yourself in a situation where nothing tells you no, you're gonna realize just how uncreative you really are. It might just be the time that I came up in, but I personally thrive off of being presented these efficiency puzzles that I have to work with in order to create something. I like seeing the edges of the screen. I like to know that I'm being put inside of a theoretical box that I have to work within and make the most of. And so when I saw this M1 MacBook base model being sold for $750 in a store, which by the way, isn't that different from $500 in 2009 if you count for inflation, I immediately started feeling those creative juices and thinking, that's what I want. So I went ahead and I ordered it, and now it's here. And now we're gonna figure out what we can get away with. So a couple ground rules for this video. I know I have all this hardware around me, but we're not gonna really use any of it. I wanna focus on what can get done in the computer. The only things that I'm going to be using are this analog heat plus effects, which I'm just using as a sound card, a transparent sound card. So you won't actually hear any of the processing. I'm just using it to broadcast the outputs of the computer to my capture setup. And then I'm also using Prophet XL as a MIDI keyboard, and that's going straight USB into the MacBook Air. So one of these is the sound card, one of these is the keyboard. And just so we can make the editing process easier, I'm running my main out master channel of the MacBook into my UBK Fatso, which is going to act as a soft clipper. I turned off the compressor on it. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to first open up OBS, which I'm going to use to capture the screen so that everyone here can see it. It's going to have its own CPU drain, so I'm going to have to consider that. And then I'm going to open up Ableton Live 11 standard. Let's take a look at the activity monitor here and let's see what we're working with. So right now we have 5.53 gigs of the 8 gigs of memory being used, the RAM, and CPU, we're just fine. So the biggest limitation, or two limitations that's bottlenecking this experience for me, is the lack of RAM and the lack of storage. Both things being required in order to use my favorite part of working in a DAW, which is sample libraries and VSTs that use a lot of samples, multi-sample libraries like Contact and Omnisphere and Keyscape. Those programs require a lot of RAM to load up the patches, especially when they're multi-sample instruments with, each note having several different recordings. And most of them have an option where you can just stream the samples using the CPU instead of loading them into the RAM. But then you really load up on your CPU. So we're going to have to nix all of that, and we're just going to use synthesizers and single samples that we can bring in effect. So even though we're just working in a base model here, I still have priorities, and I want to be able to maintain certain things about my workflow in order to make it enjoyable for me. So one of the big things for me is I like to have my buffer size down as much as I can. If I can get away with 32 samples, I will. And so we're going to start off there. And then I'm going to try to use stock plugins from Ableton whenever I can. Their stock plugins are made specifically with the DAW in mind, so a lot of them don't have a lot of latency that they introduce, and I'm trying to keep that down. The first thing we're going to do is on the master channel, we're going to put where is it? Oh yeah, audio effects is where all the Ableton stuff is. I'm not an Ableton whiz at all. I just use the program sometimes. So you're going to see me do some less than efficient stuff, but I'm going to put a master limiter here, and that introduces 2.7 milliseconds of latency. But it's important to me because I don't want to introduce any sort of unwanted distortion here. That's just a good way to make sure that it doesn't happen. It's doubly important because I'm recording the process of the music being made. And so even if I can correct later, and by the time I export the song, there's nothing wrong with it, I don't want stuff that I'm capturing here to be distorted. So 128 samples is actually kind of high when it comes to Ableton audio effects, but that's a limiter. So now I'm just going to do my best to leave the master channel alone and just add effects and EQing and dynamics on the tracks themselves. And the first thing I want to do here is bring in a plugin, something that I like to use, and that is called Addictive Drums. Addictive Drums is pretty great. First time I ever heard of it was actually at Mind Design's house when he was showing me, this must have been 5 or 6 years ago, and he was showing me finger drumming on his MIDI pad stuff from here, and I couldn't believe my ears. And then I didn't realize that you actually have to go in here and do your own work if you want to get a decent drum kit. All of the drums that are here that come with it sound like that's not bad, but that's definitely not the vibe that I would be going for. We're going to start with Tear It Out from the modern soul and R&B set. And the good thing about Addictive Drums is that it actually comes with a lot of different MIDI patterns. Like, I dig that. So now let's make this kit sound a little bit better. And let's just focus on these 3 elements one at a time. The kick here, it's okay. Has a little bit too much room to it. It's taking up too much space, and it's not hitting hard enough. So we're going to start with the volume envelope, and we're going to bring this down a little bit. Now we have the option to change the mix between the front and the beater. And then I want to introduce some distortion here, some tube distortion. Just got a little bit more grit to it. Okay, I like that. And then now that that's dialed in, let's try to get a more decent hat for what we got going on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this band pass that they have as, the high cut and low cut, and we're just going to shift this whole thing down. So we get more of the mids, less of the highs. Just give it more texture. And then there's a tape here too. Don't want too much of that. A little bit of attack actually sounds pretty good. That's the sustain. Now that we have these things, let's bring in the snare. Snare is the one that needs the most work here. We're going to kill the reverb. And then I just want to introduce more snare buzz. And I think that's what it's going to do. It's going to add some more rattle to that kick. Moving the hi-hat a little bit more center. Adjust the cuts a little bit. So now it's time to bring in the overheads. I do like that, actually. Okay, that works for me. And now that I have the kit set up, I can just go through these rhythm presets and find something that might be nice. And it sounds good because I tuned the drums. Great. So I think I'm just going to stick with that rhythm that I was working with. I tuned the drums to the pattern. Ableton actually has a clipper. It's a saturator. And then you just go to digital clip. Whatever the input is that you're driving, you just make up for that in the output. And this is just a way for us to be able to clamp down on the peaks of the drums and not have to deal with activating the limiter as we try to push this mix louder. Because us as humans, it's harder for us to hear the actual like volume information of a short sound, like a drum. Whereas it's a lot easier to hear the volume information of something elongated, like a whistle or, you know, I don't know, something long. Now we have a lot of headroom here. Yeah, we're saving like 4 dB here. Okay, so now that we have that, let's build on top of it. I'm just going to use the stuff that's in Ableton in terms of like the sound machines or like, you know, the instruments and stuff. Drift is actually pretty sweet, and I think it's kind of a new thing that they did. Load even more. This sounds okay. I purchased some drift presets last night. Right now I'm just looking for a vibe. Let's just get some MIDI information here. Now that we've got something on the timeline, I'm going to work mostly in the timeline mode. I don't know what do you call it. The other one's called clips mode, right? It's the arrangement mode, I think. It's just, I prefer to see the music like that. Clips kind of alien to me. It's cool, but like it just doesn't fit my workflow. So for the most part, we're going to be over here. Let's just see if there's anything there. I mean, by itself, it's garbage, but that's cool. This is a better start. See if we can find something else that fits the tone better. No, let's stick with the flute. I kind of wanted the information there, and I wanted like this long droning kind of sound, like the chords that are informing the rest of it. But I didn't want it to take too much space because I want to bring other stuff in that I want to be the core of it. So I just took out pretty much all the body of it, and I just opened up the filter in a way where I took less of the wow at the beginning, took that out, brought it a little bit up. So because this loop is so long and I want to get the bass right for each part, I'm going to tackle it bit by bit in terms of recording the bass notes. That's pretty cool. All right, let's edit that. So I'm basically just, kind of Frankensteining these MIDI clips together. And I kind of can't really finish to the end of the loop because I need to know where the next chord is going. So that way my bass line can go there. There we go, that's sick. So I just have to finish up this bass line. That's what we do. Sick. That's a fucking bass line right there. Oh yeah. We have drums. We have some chords, pad, like fluty thing. Now we have a bass line. Now these things I might alter a little bit later, but for now, I think we're good. Well, actually, no, the next thing I want to do is add more percussion. And the way I'm going to do that is there's this new plugin called Life, made from the same people that made Addictive Drums too, funny enough. Kind of got a monopoly on my drum sounds. Life is cool. It's like, well, Life is generally cool, but this Life is going to be cool because we're going to record something via my phone, and then it's just going to drag and drop here and create like a... I'll show you. We got a tambourine here, and so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Life app. And we recorded that. This should show up pretty quickly. So now we have that loaded up, so let's hear what it has to say. I just made that recording on my phone, and then now it's in my computer, and it automatically created a rhythm out of like things that it automatically chopped up. I mean, this is fucking insane. And how do I know if I like it with the beat? I just play. Man, that's pretty fire. They have a thing here called Groove that just has different grooves, I guess, different ways that the notes can play. Too slow, you can back everything up a little bit. In order to kind of glue it to everything else, I put a filter on it. It's really bright right now. I'm gonna bring down the pitch on these tambourine sounds. I'm getting a little paranoid about how much CPU we're using. 5-6%. Okay, I think we'll be fine. So for the first 8 bars, we're gonna take out the bass. Let's see if we can add some like reverb and stuff in here. All right, so this beat is banging, but let's make it actually like a track, because right now it's just chords and bass. Let's see what they got for me in the synth keys and leads department. Ooh, I like this. Maybe a different sound. I like this melody though. I think we got it. So I like that. But I only want it for one part, so we're gonna record that. Just for one note. That's it. I think it'll be like a nice like little earworm that comes in every now and then. That's sick. I like that. So we're gonna record this. Yeah. I just want like a persistent string throughout the whole thing. So, and then it's nice. So right there, I like that. So right after the first part of the arrangement where that string comes in, that like one note string, 2 elements kind of duck out. When those duck out, I want this to come in. Cool. Cool. So I took that plinking sound and I put I just covered it a little bit with some low pass filter, and then I'm gonna have it auto pan. We're also gonna put auto pan on that ghost sound, more reverb on that. So here we should start kind of bringing in some dropouts and stuff with the drums. We got the bass there. Take out the tambourines there. Maybe not. Maybe not a ride. Now on this one, now we're just creating like drum variations so that way it sounds like a song, you know? I need an open hat. There we go. There needs to be a little bit more of a build up here, huh? There we go. I Again, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage. I'm not live streaming, but I'm recording my screen this entire time with OBS, which is that's not light software. So I duplicated the MIDI notes from the flute chords, and I'm gonna bring in something a little bit louder. So I'm just gonna hit record. I don't ever do automation in here, so this is interesting. I'm just bringing up the filter on that. See right here, I need something else. I'm gonna create another instance of Life, that plugin that lets you record stuff on your phone. And I'm just gonna do some weird sounds. And let's just see what happens. I like the randomness of that plugin. Okay, let's take a look at it. It's already here. We won it for this part. This plugin gets very ridiculous very quickly. That's kind of sick. Fire. Let me see if it needs anything else. I don't know. I kind of like it where it is. Okay, I think we're done here. Thank you so much for watching. You can get a lot done in Ableton with just the stock plugins and instruments that come with it. I brought my own drum plugin, the Addictive Drums too, but other than that, all the synthesizers were drift and an electric piano. I think it was simpler, maybe, but there's a lot here. You don't need a more powerful computer than this in order to make music. We're at a point where any of these are going to be fantastic for what you're trying to do. This laptop was $750. That's crazy. The fact that I could spend that much money and get something that runs this well. And not only did I do all of this right now with no problems, but at the same time, I was also recording the screen so that way we could use it for the video. This just goes to show you that you see me on this channel maybe using samplers and all kinds of gear that might cost a bit more than this. You don't need any of this stuff. I just care about my own creative efficiency. This is the right answer for me most of the time. Because trust me, I've been doing I did this for a long time before I ever touched a sampler. I think there's a lot to be said with what we just witnessed here. One, that Ableton, when working within its own structure, is actually extremely efficient. Two, that that you don't need an expensive computer in order to make good music. You can just walk into an electronics store and just pick one of these up, and you're on the same level as anybody else in the world. You can make chart-topping #1 hits on something that costs less than $1,000. It's kind of incredible. Anyway, that's it from me. If you want to hear this beat and all the other beats on the channel, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon. Other than that, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video.